Hello. So today we are going to start our next webinar in format public interview. And
thank you.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Martin.
Can you please start by sharing the task that I sent to you earlier?
Yep. Should I also share the
task description?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can paste it on top of the file.
Yeah, sure.
I think we'll need Andre for this to check to your screen, to change to your screen.
just Mark start sharing. I will.
I see good luck in the comments. Thanks, guys. I'll try my best.
I think it's for me. I have a higher chance of embarrassing myself here.
All right, so I'm sharing my screen and just pasting the description, and I probably should.
Yeah, comment it out. Okay.
Right.
So in this interview process, I've sent the task to Mark earlier for him to make to code up a little JavaScript task. The point was for him to have some time to reflect on it, come up with a solution, and then send it. The task is quite simple. We have a long sequence of ones and zeros. And we need to find first the longest sequence of zeros. And second, we need to arrange the sequences of ones and zeros in ascending order while alternating them. So we have ones, then zeros, then ones, then zeros, then ones, and zeros, and so on. Before we actually go to the code, Mark, what do you think about the task?
Okay, so the task was interesting. It's actually been a while since I've worked on some algorithmic tasks, and have a thought that working with sorting arrays and stuff. So, and I think it's a good task to start a discussion around a lot of different topics. And so, yeah, it was fun.
Nice. So you mentioned that we can start discussing a lot of different topics, and this is what we're actually going to do with this task. Let's scroll down to the solution of the first problem, getting the longest sequence of zeros.
Yep. So here we are. I've decided to split the solutions into different functions. The first part consists of this longest zero sequence. So I'll just describe what it does.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously we have a sequences array as an input. Then as this is an array of strings, we join it by an empty string, which will just create a string containing all of them just concatenated. Mm-hmm. Then I'll split this string by ones, which gives me an array of zeros. And actually, and in some cases, it also leaves an empty strings. So what I do next is I sort it by an alphabetic. So sort by default sorts everything by alphabet. And this gives me an array with last element being the longest sequence of zeros, which is basically what we need to find. Okay. And I'm just grabbing the last element from an array. And since this is a string, I need to return the longest sequence of zeros. So I'm splitting it back to an array and returning it.
Okay.
So and in the console, I'll try to. Where is the refresh button? Here we go. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'll refresh, and as you can see, I also pretty printed this sequence array, so you can see a lot clearer, and the viewers as well. And the longest sequence is this one, and you can see that it's printed here as well. It's a 17 elements array.
Mhm. Okay, so that's one of the shortest solutions that I've seen to this problem. And there are two things that I see here. First of all, you don't like writing a lot of code, which I like. Because, you know, when you have a lot of code, you probably have a lot of bugs. So less amount of code, less bugs.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I have a problem with this code. So it works, obviously, right? It works. I have no intention of saying it doesn't work. So you've solved the task. But let's say that once we actually got this to our imaginary production, it works very slowly. What is the reason for this code to be running slowly?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. First of all, yeah, I'm lazy, so I'll try to write as short as possible. And yeah, it's obviously pretty readable and easy to digest by other developers, but the problem is that I'm using a lot of array methods which under the hood, you know, intersects with array a lot of times and iterating it over and over. So for example, when I do join, I'm basically iterating over every element and creating a string which will then just concatenate one by one. And that's basically if we talk about algorithmic complexity, which is n. How do you say it? Big O of n?
Yeah, you can say that, but I don't really care about big O here.
Yeah, so you by join you concatenate you iterate one more time. With split, you need again to iterate through the string, but basically under the hood split is also will rip the string apart and iterate it over again. And also the sort will do the same thing, but with the result of previous two. So we have a triple for loop, if I can say roughly. And then I'm also grabbing the string and turning it into array as well, which is which will result in number of zeros in the sequence. So
Okay.
there's quite a lot of operations going on with just these two lines.
Which is fine. It works, right? So we found the working solution. Now we need to think about how we can improve it. So let's say we found out that this works, but it does not work up to standard. So how can we make this work faster? What is going to be the faster implementation?
So in order to make it faster, I think the most important bit is to make as less loops as possible, so we can save some processor time and do like everything at once. So in this example, I would do something like a for each. So starting an iteration of the whole array, then I would create some additional array which is empty that will be used as a cache, where I will be storing our like a temporary longest sequence. And while I'm iterating, I will go one by one. So if I see once, I will just skip. If I see 0, I'll create a temporary array, and as long as I am getting ones in a sequence, I'll just add them into my temporary array. And then as long as I see 1, it means that my sequence is done, and this is what I get. And I compare it with my cache. If this sequence is longer than my cache, then I replace it. Then I go on. I see another 0. I create another. So I'm just not creating. I am reusing my temporary array and start over from the scratch. And in that sense, I am iterating only once, but while I am iterating, I am creating the subsequences and comparing them to the cache, which means I need to just go over the array one time. and after the first iteration, the longest sequence will be in my cache. So I just grab that, and that's it.
Why do you want to use array as the cache?
I think because I don't need to use any type translations to like a string, and as long as one iteration is over, I can just first of all, the requirement from the task is to return the sequence, right? The sequence
No, it's to find.
Yeah, to find. I
not
mean
to return. By the way, not to return, to find the sequence.
Yeah, but if we're talking about functions, we need to like return some value that we processed. So, and in my understanding, the task was to return the sequence being an array of like it was in the given array, not just a number of the longest sequence.
So you can still return the longest sequence, but my question is more focused on the implementation that you described. So if you're using array to push, this sequence can be really, really large. So let's say we are dealing with a large scale application here, and this huge amount of data. So actually recreating this array is going to consume a lot of memory, and it will be time consuming. It will fragment your memory. So you will start getting performance issues that are related to actual memory operations. So if you, let's say you don't have enough memory to use an additional array, how can you do the same?
Yeah, I got your point now. So yeah, array is obviously it's not the best in terms of memory consumption because every time you add something, you allocating more memory, and especially when you're allocating it, let's say in the start of an array instead of the like a push, it will also under the hood like it will need to shift all of the indexes and the elements, so it's also time consuming. So yeah, I think in this particular case, when we have zeros and ones, I think we can just create a counter basically, and once we find the longest sequence, we can just create a string with or array of sequence with this number of zeros and return it. I think that will be a faster solution and more memory.
So you're going to return the index of start and the length of the sequence, right? This is what I understood, or maybe I didn't.
Yeah. So I have a counter, like let's in this case it will be 17, and then just knowing that our max sequence is 17, I will create an array and fill it with zeros like 70 times.
No. This is not the task. The task is to find the longest sequence of zeros in the current array. So you need to give me starting index and number, the counter basically.
Oh, okay.
Because I need to know where the longest sequence is located. So if you think about it, scroll up a bit. The task is, I know it's one sentence, but it's find the longest sequence of zeros. It's not return any sequence of zeros. I don't care for any sequence of zeros. I care for longest sequence of zeros, and I need to know its location in the array that I've provided. So this is actually the root of the task, and this is why it's much better to give me two numbers, starting index and length of the sequence. So I'll be able to find it in my memory.
Yeah, so that was my fault not to asking additional questions of what actually we need to return here, or not return, but rather find.
Yes, intentionally there is no return value in the task. So I would have expected you to ask me, okay, I will find the sequence, but how can I show you the sequence? What do you expect my interface to be, or whatever?
Okay. The contract,
yeah. But anyway, your solution is quite nice, quite interesting, and this is why I accepted it. I want to ask you something. I noticed that in your coding style, you're using lambdas instead of function declaration. Why do you do that?
So, long story short, it's something that we in my team are just used to do. We prefer to use lambdas because, first of all, it's pretty concise. It's saves you a bit of characters in your code, which is nice. And depending on the situation, it's produces the same like value as the definition. So if you can, I would say if you can use it without losing any benefits, I would say you can go and use it.
Okay, but I'm surprised. So you said that you like to write less code.
Yep.
And if you write on top, so can you please go to make a new line on line 33 and write function longest zero sequence, brackets, and so on. And just put the parameter name, the sequence array. No, yeah, I don't care of the function body, just the, actually, please delete the function body. I want to show something specific. So can you delete the function body? Yeah, 35, 6, 7, yeah, we don't need those. So if you care about number of characters that you're writing, you actually, no, delete this. Leave it with the same name. So you're actually writing 2 or 3 characters less if you use function declaration. So if you really care about the amount of code that you write, you should prefer function declaration. Okay,
you mean
but
you mean without the body?
no, with the body, of course. I just wanted to show you that the difference between how this is declared is actually shorter. But again, more serious now, I want to know what is the real difference between function declaration and function assignment in this lambda way.
Okay. First of all, it's the syntax, obviously. You can, in lambda functions, instead of doing the body of the function, you can immediately return some expression just without the body. And but you need to be careful with when you want to return objects, you need to wrap them in the braces.
Okay.
Other than the syntax key points, I would say that there is a difference in how function could be called from a different location in the code. For example, function declaration you can use before you declare it. In the case of the arrow function, you need to use it only after you declare it. And that happens because function declaration are hoisted and the lambdas are not, because it's a function expression. Also,
okay.
Yep.
I'm looking for a bigger difference, by the way, something major between both of them. Everything you said up to this point is correct, but I'm looking for something specific. I would like to know the difference between how this is working in both type of functions.
Yeah. So there's also a difference in the context. The function declaration is so this is referring to the place where the function was called, and in lambdas functions there is a statement that it doesn't have own this, but I interpret this as a so this referring to the place where the arrow function was created.
Okay, so this is true, but it's still not the biggest difference about the this. So there is something else in the behavior of the this here that I am looking for.
Yeah, you cannot call a arrow function with a new keyword. It will not create any context for you.
Okay.
Also, you cannot have a named arrow function. So, for example, in this case, the name will be inherited from the variable we are using to store it in. Also, another difference would be that you cannot use your arrow function as a generator. It's only possible with function declaration syntax. So, and hence, you cannot use yield inside your arrow functions.
Okay. I would also like to say something about how bind, call, and apply work with those types of functions.
So, yeah, there are three types of how you can change the context of the function you are calling. Call and apply will call the function directly, and you can pass an object that will be used as a context in the first argument, and then in call you can pass arguments one by one. Whether in array you can pass it as an array. In apply you can pass it as an array. And bind will create another function which will basically bind your passed argument as a this, and I believe all other arguments starting from second will be used as an arguments. So you can kind of do carrying with bind.
Okay.
In arrow function, however, bind, call, and apply will not affect it in any way because it will not change the initial context of your arrow function.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so I think we can move to the second part of the task, which was to actually create a sorted array out of this, out of the sequences of ones and zeros.
Yep.
So the second part of the task actually expects you to come up with a sorted version of this. So we're starting with the smallest sequence and we're running up to the biggest, while we are alternating ones and zeros, ones and zeros, ones and zeros. You can delete the function declaration, so we'll clean up the console. And let's move to the second part of the implementation. So can you walk us through your solution here?
Yep. So I've decided to divide the solution into two separate functions, which will make it like easier to read. And also I am kind of using it for on a condition statement, so I can reuse some of the functionality I've wrote. So sort sequences by ascending order receives an array, the same one. First, I am basically following with the same approach I did in the first part. I am making this array into a string. After that, I am splitting this by ones and zeros to.
Mate, sorry, can I ask you to just zoom in a bit the screen?
Yep. Is that good?
Okay, thank you. For me, it is, yes.
Yep. So yeah, after this is a string, I can reuse it and create zero sequences and ones sequences by splitting them by ones and zeros. As I said, split will create some empty strings in case where we are changing one sequence by another. So I am filtering them with Boolean, so the empty strings will go away. And after that, I'm doing the same sort operation, which will sort the exact order I need, which is ascending. So in this case, zeros will be it will be an array of strings of zeros with an ascending order of their length. The same one with ones. And so the interesting part in this task is that I don't know exactly how many sequences of ones here in this array and how many sequences of zeros in this array. So they might be equal, or one will be. So for example, zero sequences will be by one more than 0 ones, by ones. So in order to cope with that, I am basically comparing the lengths of them and choosing the the larger ones and passing that into an order to my merge sort sequences function, which receives these two arrays. The first argument is being the largest array. And basically around that condition, I am passing whether either zeros or ones in this case.
Okay, that's clear.
In our in my merge sorted sequences, I am receiving these arrays, and I decided to go with reduce since it will allow me to accumulate my ending results.
Don't actually destroy the result because you lost the sequences, because it's now a string.
Yeah.
So since there is not enough information, and in a real task you will be given enough information, that's fine. But now, once you make string out of it, you're losing the actual ranges. So you've lost the information which is where those sequences actually exist. So let's say the sort sequences by ask, this function, this is working with very big arrays. Okay, so let's say we don't have enough memory to handle 2 additional arrays. So how are you going to approach the problem if you know that you cannot use arrays, you cannot split, filter, sort, and so on?
Okay, so I will probably go with the kind of solution I described in the first one. So I'll try to reduce the number of loops and use my counter as a not counter, sorry. So this is just sequences. So I'll probably create some map maybe where I will go one by one, create sequences. Then I need to store the lengths of them and the position, right?
Yeah, starting index and length is enough.
Yeah. So yeah, again, I will iterate over. I will gather some information about probably in some kind of map where I can store the start index and the length. And after one loop, I can. So if I really want to optimize this, I would probably go for some custom sort algorithm, but I'm not used to write them and work with algorithm for a long time, so it will require some time. But I probably could use something like insert sort, where I will compare the lengths of them, and then depending on what output I would need, I would somehow merge it into a structure that would allow to be in line with the contract.
Okay, may I ask you to zoom in a bit as well, again? So for some of our audience, because I was able to catch a glimpse of one of the comments. Okay, so let's say earlier when we discussed the first part of the task, I told you that you can actually, the task was to find. So you can actually return starting index and length, right? And you can actually do this. So we discussed that you're going to do starting index and length. And you can actually return an array of tuples that is going to give you this and sort this array. So you don't need to actually touch the original array. Let's say it's too big to be duplicated, touched, rearranged. So you can actually return something like a map of the sorted array. So if I need to parse this sorted as described in the task, I will go to your array and I will start. Okay, first element has starting index, length. I'm taking this chunk of the array, I'm doing something with it, and so on and so on. All right, I don't think I have other questions about the task. It was quite an interesting solution that you gave, considering the limited amount of information there. I would like us to move to the second one. I sent you earlier a link to a website that I would like to build.
Yep.
Should I would like us to discuss. Yeah, please.
Okay, one sec.
Okay. So just for guys in the audience, this is a random template that I've picked from Team Forest or whatever. The template itself is not important where it's coming from, but it's not an actual real product. But what we need to discuss here, Mark, is I would like you to discuss with me what is the technology stack that you would use in order to build this. Let's say I'm your client, I'm coming with this, I want a site like that, and my technical guy is here to advise, and you need to explain your technical decisions here. So let's start by choosing the technical stack. What technical stack are you going to choose?
So first of all, I have a question, like, who am I exactly in this situation? I'm a technical guy that will consult a client with just how to make this possible.
Oh, I hired you as a front-end developer, and I'm coming to you with this site, and I'm asking you to build it for me, end to end.
Yep. Okay. So by looking at the site, I'm mostly coming with questions like how scalable we need to be, in how customizable this website should be. If a client is just a small company that sells 2 or 3 types of chairs, for example, it's doesn't make any sense really to hire a big team that will build the system from scratch and make a powerful platform that will implement all of the payment details, services and stuff like that. So if this is really something small and like a one-time thing that you just build and not really contributing much more products into this website, I will probably go with some existing shop engines.
Okay.
I don't know, you can name something like Shopify or
All right,
others.
so that's okay. Let's say we are taking Shopify, but I want you to build custom front end for it. So okay, we took the backend. I'm fine. I'm happy with it. I have the CMS. Everybody is happy. But I would like to have custom design, which is not supported out of the box. So what are you going to use for the front end stack here?
Okay, so if we are talking about the backend CMS, it means that we need to be pretty, I would say, smart about how we will react to the cases when there are new products and you need to display them as soon as possible. It means that we need to probably create some SPA application. So something like a static website probably won't fit in this case because more customization is needed. And maybe there are some more like articles or like pandemic notifications that we need to display as soon as possible. So we need to be reactive in this way. And so there are a couple of options here in the market currently in the front-end stacks, and one of them is our React stack, Angular, Vue. If I had to choose, I am mostly working with React right now, and I am more experienced with it and know ins and outs and how to probably optimize some things on a deeper level rather than in some Angular or Vue stack. So this comes with its own pros and cons, and I would also question: Am I the only developer in this case, or am I will be leading a small team or a part of the team? Because this when it scales on a team level, we need to make sure. There are two possible kind of situations. One is I am the only guy who is starting this project, and in this case, I can choose the kind of stack I am most comfortable with, and then hire other developers myself and make sure they are aligned with the stack.
So let's say let's box it. So because we are limited in time. So let's say you're the only developer and discuss how we are going to start. And let's say that if we succeed and start making money, we will hire more people. So consider it in this way.
Okay, so if if I'm the only one, it's also so I'll probably choose React Stack, but besides that, I would probably look up into more like details of the requirements, like how fast should we should users see our first page. If it's like it should be very fast, we'll probably go for some server-side rendering solution from the start to make it like optimized. Or if it's not really in the case, I'll just create the environment myself. If it's something like WordPress theme, which is we are looking at in this case, I'll probably look up to some React engine that is built to work with WordPress and to bootstrap everything a lot faster and actually focus on the functionality itself rather than spending like a month of just making sure everything is in place.
Okay, so considering that you've chosen React because you have experience with it, I trust you that you believe that you are going to deliver with this, which is fine. That's amazing. But let's discuss what are the differences between React and Vue. So actually, do you have any experience with Vue? Because this question is not fair. Okay, so any experience with Angular? Have you ever touched it a bit?
Yeah, I touched it as a educational program. I just created some simple Google Keep clone with it, and it's a simple application. But I touched the REST APIs, I touched the router a bit, and different how to create components and stuff.
Since you mentioned routing, how are you going to do routing on your React application?
So it depends on the backend. If it's something very old and only can do server render, we are kind of in trouble. But if it's capable of doing something like REST API, or GraphQL is now a hype thing, so I would probably choose something like React Router and do everything on the client side and just requesting everything I need from the backend through REST API.
Okay. And since you're going to do a shop, it means people will have to log in. Let's say you need to define how this is going to work. How are you going to make users log in into your website?
Yeah. So in terms of routing, I'll set up something like protected route, and whenever a user or guest will try to go into like account details or something that may contain sensitive data, I'll make sure he's authorized first to visit that page, and that's basically will be an authorization between client and the server.
Okay, do you have any experience with JWT tokens for authentication?
I have little, but it was kind of 2 years ago. It's a simple concept once you understand it. It's not a big deal to implement. So I'll probably spend some couple of days investigating and getting my mind ready back to how to do it. Because in my experience, I am for the past years working in a kind of different front-end area. I am creating a component library for our customer with design ready components in React, and this makes me kind of offline of standard front-end tasks, I would say. So we don't have a backend, we don't have some contracts that we need to
no, that's cool.
make sure and authorization. So, but yeah,
I'll ask you about that in a second.
Okay.
But I want to ask you about, let's say, because I'm a harp, I would like you to ask you, how are you going to make the remember me functionality inside of the web browser? You know, when you're logging into a system, sometimes you have a checkbox, you say remember me, and next
Yep.
time you go to the page, you're auto logged in. So how are you going to implement that?
I would probably say it should be implemented on the backend. So once you tick it, it will make like a persistent session, or maybe store some flag in the database that we need to, keep the connection with that user once he is back logging in. So
yeah, but wait. I will close the browser, so the connection will disappear.
Yeah.
And I will open the browser again. So how are you going to log me in?
Yeah, it might. So I will need to store this token somehow. It all comes down to how to store it, and I think one solution would be something like HTTP cookies, which is a safer option. It can be accessed by just a random user who is hopped in your computer, trying to access like something like local storage. I'd probably not go for it.
Why wouldn't you go for local storage?
I'm not sure exactly how it will affect security in this case, but I am assuming, remember me might contain some, so it might require me to store something like a token inside, and token is local storage is not a pretty safe place to store sensitive data, since it can be hacked and retrieved by some XSS attacks, some man-in-the-middle attacks, and so on.
Understood. Yes, you're right. So a bit earlier, you said something about component library. I am curious, what are you doing there? What are you using? How are you building it? Is it something custom?
Yeah. So if you're familiar with something like Material UI, we basically creating the same thing, but fully customizable for our needs. My domain area is e-commerce, so kind of the site as we're looking like right now, and so there are some details that would need to make components look very different from one deploy settings to another, I would say. And so a component library makes us it makes it really easy to do so with a component library. So we have a set of components written in React. We also use styled components, which is a CSS in JS engine for React. And so styled components has a cool out-of-the-box theming solution, which was exactly like our case. We can create this, slider, and depending on what ID of what kind of website we are passing into our component, it can change dramatically in the UI side. And yeah, so it's a custom-built library with a lot of.
So why custom built? Why didn't you take something like Storybook, for example, to use as a foundation of the library?
Yeah, I think because there are a lot of discussion happening with our design team. So we are receiving designs and making like everything from scratch, and from time to time it will require to customize our components or like rewrite it from the scratch. It's not comes only to like how it looks, but also how it behaves. So making it custom probably would be more easily like scalable, rather than making rather than taking some material UI and trying to hack it and like fork it, I don't know, and try to inject your parts of functionality you want to add into existing ones. And by that, we also can ensure we are testing everything to our extent as we like. So in our case, we are using unit tests, some end-to-end testing. Also, we use the similar approach that Material UI has, which is visual testing, where you have your component like screenshotted how it looks at different breakpoints, and every time you change something, you can rerun them and see if the like a screenshot, which is an image, and it matching in a pixel perfect way, so we can ensure everything is correct.
Okay, so I will make a note because I want to ask you a question in a few minutes. But there is something, just a sec to make the note. Okay, so you mentioned tests. Okay, so what do you test and why do you test that thing exactly? So let's say you have let's go back to the source code. Okay, let's discuss it with a real code example without tests. So to the tasks that I gave you. Okay, so you have this function sort sequence says by ask. What types of tests do you need to do in order to cover this functionality?
So I can pick this example, right?
Okay, this one is fine.
For instance, yeah, long is zero sequence. The things that I'll probably want to test here is what happens if I pass, I don't know, undefined here. Will it break my code if I somehow use this function in a sequence with other functions, you know, maybe carrying it, maybe I'm relying on it. So I need to make sure that it will output a stable and predictable output, even though some inputs may be wrong. And basically, I need to test that it does what I need, and not nothing else. So, you know, it should comply with like a simple single responsibility type of thing. So,
okay, what does it mean for this function to have single responsibility?
it means that if I want to just find long with zero sequence, I'm not expecting this function to call an API and do some, you know, saving something to a database. It would be just not predictive and very confusing to someone who will, you know, just see the name of the function, and once he calls it, it results in completely different behavior than he would think of. So
Okay. But let me get you back to the test. So what will happen if we put go to line 30, like there, line 30, not 13, 30.
okay,
yeah. So put a comma and on the new line put 2, like the number 2. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yep.
Okay. So what should be the behavior of your function right now?
As you can see, it's something
It's
funny.
not correct.
Yeah. This is exactly why the test should exist. So actually, I think one of the...
No, wait. I saw something interesting. Look on the right. So the first function broke, but the second one gives you 2 2s, not 1. So you somehow managed to actually increase the amount of 2s. You see? On the I don't have a way to annotate, but below sorted sequence, go You have
Yeah.
two twos. How did that happen?
It's because I'm splitting it twice.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
so
so
that's very
yeah.
good. So you know what you wrote and you know how it works. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that the unit tests are the main purpose are exactly this. So it should make sure that if something goes wrong, you can manage it. I mean, to a certain extent, you can. I think you can break like every function if you really want to, but you need to cope with the requirements that a business is asking for you in that case. And I think the most important bit is to test the actual use cases like happy path and happy path, and make sure your service is stable in that case, your unit.
Okay, so you said happy path and happy path. That's nice. So let me try to, it's going to be the last question for me, but should you test the input arguments of the function? Should you test if sequence array is actually array in the unit tests?
In the unit tests, probably no.
Okay.
I mean,
But why?
if I am using the function, I am mostly curious about the end result, what this unit is actually produces. I don't probably really care about how it does it. You know, we need to use it like a gray box when in unit tests rely on the actual behavior of how this function not how, but it does the thing. You need to assert what it does, but not how it does it. So in this case, I would not in the unit test I would not assert if sort method was called, because it makes zero sense. The day later, a customer could ask me to sort it in some other way, or
Yeah, but the question is slightly different. So
okay.
the question is sequences array, this input argument. My question is, should you test that in the unit tests? Should you test the types of your input arguments? Should you test that sequences array is actually a real array, not a number or a string?
Yeah. So this is what I probably said before, is that I would probably test this with different inputs. So if I instead of array will pass an undefined or a string, what will happen? And in this case,
what will happen?
It will probably, if I put undefined here, will throw an error because the join will not be available on undefined or any other, stuff. So yeah, one interesting approach to deliver stuff is to use test-driven development, where you first look at your requirements and then write your unit tests. This makes you staying behind all of the implementation details because they are not written yet, and you can possibly think of more cases like that. So what am I doing with my inputs? What am I doing if they are wrong and stuff like that? So that makes you like a space of thinking about how to cope with the requirements, how to implement the solution. So in this case, we can also use something like TypeScript, and it will and then assert what is our parameters to the function or flow. This will allow us to also make sure that our inputs are in the correct types and contain correct things. And
yeah, but that's compile time. Runtime, you can actually get garbage. So let me ask you this: if your function receives data that it does not understand, what should happen?
I think this should be discussed with like a business or something. So
okay, that's actually correct. But from your point of view, let's say business doesn't know, doesn't care, there is no business involved. Let's discuss it just in terms of good practices. What should happen if the function receives bad input?
So I'll probably return some error with custom error message saying that, you provided bad values and list them and said that we are probably expecting an array of strings with zeros and ones. And depending on the exact contract, we may want to return something like 0 or null. Just So there is a couple options. We can throw, we can return by the contract some exact value, for example, null or like a 0, and then based on that we can create some custom.
Okay, but what's
UI
the difference? What's the difference between throwing the error and returning a default value?
Difference is that when we use this function in like a sequence, we can then rely on that unhappy path and also correct our other business logic to, make sure the flow is still going, but we corrected it because some bad stuff happens. In throw, you just ending the processing like right there and right now.
Which is, if you think about it, it's the reasonable thing to do. You don't know what to do with the content. You should cut it.
Yep.
So you should stop the process and terminate it. Think about it this way. If your operating system is not sure what you're doing, you either get kernel panic or blue screen of death. They're not trying to correct it in any way.
Yep.
So if something happens, it's better to throw. Even if the behavior is not defined by your product, and if you don't have like strict NFRs from architecture provided by your architect that are saying your level of fault tolerance or defensive coding strategy and so on, if you don't have this, the best thing to do is to throw. And we are actually out of time. So thank you.
Boy, it was fast.
Thank you for this. I know.
I'll probably stop sharing.
Quite fast. I think we need Andrei to come moderate us.
Yeah, I suggest to ask question from Mark to Martin. Ask question about company, and after that we will be ready to wait answer questions from our audience. If you have any questions, please feel free to write in the chat in Facebook or YouTube, and we will show the questions and guys will answer. So please go on with questions from Mark.
Oh yeah, so this is the time in the interview where it's time for a candidate to ask questions. I'll probably do it in a more abstract way because we are not bound here to some specific company. So I'll just probably ask. I'll provide some my favorite questions that I'll probably ask in the interview, and probably. I think it's bad when the interview is ended and you say that, oh, it's cool, I don't have any questions. So it's instantly makes interviewers believe that you're not pretty interested in the job, basically. So, it makes me feel that you just want to woke up, do some coding, go to bed, get salary, and that's it. You don't interested in anything other than that. So my types of questions that I'd probably ask is, how what are other benefits that a company may provide rather than just salary? Is there any like English classes, if it's applicable, if there is any paid conferences that developers could go and enhance their knowledge just by going and interacting with other devs there. Maybe you have some internal resources like learned resources or maybe paid resources by other platforms that provide it. If you want to add something?
Well, yeah, because if you think about it, all of the things that you're listing, they're actually part of the job offer and job description. So this is more or less information that is available to you one way or another. Yeah, maybe not in 100% detail, but this information that you can actually get from the careers website of every company, like literally every company that I've seen, the career page lists all the benefits on top. So this is these are like, yes, you can get clarification if you're interested in something specific, but I would really like to get, if I'm on the interview, I would like to ask the guys about the team, about the culture in the team.
Yeah, that was my second part
which is
of
the
questions.
team. Yeah, I would like to meet the guys if possible, like not just put me in some team. Like, yeah, some guy interviewed me, that's fine, and then I'm put into some team which is not this guy's team, like some other people I've never met. So I would like, in my place, if I'm on the interview, I would like to get to meet the guys, to see if we are going to click in, and maybe one or two teams are not going to be my team, but the third one is going to be my option. But from my experience, the more the person in front of you is interested into the meta things, which are not related to coding, but to process, like how do you release software? What happens when your software is not up to spec? Do you do hot fixes? How do you maintain your code on production? Do you have access to this? So these are all kind of interesting questions that the developer should ask, in my opinion, and it will definitely make a good impression on the interviews.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. and you can also ask some project-specific things if you're interested. For example, like what is your testing stack? What is your tech stack? What may other responsibilities be in this position other than just coding? Maybe it's interviewing people, or going into some like a speaker as a face of a company, and stuff like that. It's some maybe other than coding activities that you may find.
I have a question to you. It's outside of the technical interview, obviously.
Yep.
What do you think of the way the interview was structured?
I mean, I like it. I personally prefer to start interviews with theory, which I think we kind of did the same in this case. So even though I've prepared the code beforehand, we started just talking about the code instead of just jumping into it straight away. And I think this is good to get your mind ready to some deep technical stuff. It's always good to start with something easy and some small talks maybe. So, and then just accumulating the speed as we go on. So
if you think about it, I actually asked you all the most important questions about the language, or if not all, most of them, because we are time boxed. So I asked you about scope, about functions, about context. I asked you about the syntax changes. I asked you about how arrays are behaving, how they're copied, how the different methods are working. So we actually covered a huge portion of the language. Yes, we did not cover map set. We did not cover fetch, and obviously we cannot cover everything in 1 hour.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
we did a very, very good foundation, and if you know this foundation, I would expect that you will know the other things as well, because I don't want to say it, but I've seen so many people that want to go to interview and they cannot actually write a simple for loop. And by the way, the reason that I gave you the task before and not on the interview is because I wanted you to have the time to reflect on it, to solve it in your own speed, in your own pace, because this was not an interview to see how you handle stress. Okay, so this was the interview when we discuss a software problem. we had two problems. We had one task and we had one future potential project. So we've actually covered a lot of things. We covered process, testing, teams, choosing tools. We mentioned a bit of the solid principles. We mentioned what else? Business involvement. Something that I really liked is that you gave me a lot of options for questions, right? Because when you were discussing things, I was actually picking up from there. I did not have a concrete plan on what am I going to ask you. But if you were silent for the most part, I would default into a mode where I'm asking you what is context, what is scope, what is hoisting, what is this, that, and so on. But I really like that you gave me bread. So you gave me the ability to ask you questions. That was amazing.
That was also what I liked, because it's hard to cover a lot of topics in 1 hour, but you managed to pick up some topics from my answers and start from there. So there was a good flow where we touch something and then we go deeper into this area, then we evolve this topic, and then we switch to another one. And this is kind of the flow when you not have to switch really some context like dramatically, because you already touched on it, and you can just go to the left and discuss further on this side. So that was cool.
Okay, I think we're ready for questions.
Yeah, we have few questions here. Let's pick something interesting from the stream of the questions. I'm not sure that we will read all of them. Can Martin advise for 1 or 2 books or internet resources which might help to prepare for this kind of interviews?
I actually know this guy. Hey, hi Andrei. Very nice to meet you. So books cannot prepare you for this kind of interview. This was an interview for a senior developer. So only experience can prepare you for this kind of interview. Even if you know everything, the way I was asking the question, so I did not ask him anything for local storage for cookies. I asked him how he's going to remember the login of the user. I asked him about routing. I did not ask him about server-side rendering. I asked him about the routing. So you see, these things, the way that he was able to connect the different topics and so on, I think this is something that you can do only with experience. I don't think you can just read the books and you won't be able to connect the dots. You can read the English dictionary, but you will not learn English this way.
Okay, thank you for the answer. We have a bunch of questions, something like how to optimize, how to optimize performance, what do you think about best practice? But today we are going to talk about interview process, and I'm pick questions related to interview and probably growing seniority as well. I'm sorry, I don't read all of our questions.
By the way, I remember there is a book that's called "You Don't Know JS." It's a good book to start with. It will help people start with the core of the language. So I think You Don't Know JS. I think it's open source. You can find it in GitHub and so on. So I think that book is
series.
Yeah, it's a good start, I think.
Yeah, plus that.
So we have a question. Are you serious? Is it the questions for senior developer?
I did not understand the question. What does it mean?
This question in Russian, it sounds like, are you serious? Is the questions are questions for senior developer, for interview for senior developer?
Okay, so I have my own perspective on this. You can define seniority in many ways, but I define seniority in my way. Okay, this is why I did the interview. So first of all, I would expect from a senior figure to be able to discuss with me openly, to ask me the right questions. I would not expect the person to be the best algorithm developer, because that's a different position. We were interviewing for GS senior developer. We were not discussing algorithms, data science. We were not talking in the scope of web development. So my interview was tailored towards a general GS developer, right? If I need to do interview for a person who is going to write algorithms, I will do completely different type of interview. If I need to do interview for a web-focused front-end developer like pure front-end, I would also involve CSS. I would also involve other topics. But the way I did the interview, I'm pretty sure that Mark will be capable of handling most of the things that I can throw at him. So if you expect like a super special twisted type of question, I would not try to ask such question. During the interview, you need to be clear on what you're asking. It's fine to have, some room for maneuver. Like the first task was find, not return a array of zeros. It was to find the longest sequence. But the point should be for you to open the guy or the person in front of you, to give him room to breathe. So you're going to take out the best of him, right? This is why I didn't want Mark to code live. I'm not testing him for stress. I don't want him to do Dijkstra squared search type of algorithm, A-star search. And this is, sorry guys, this is bullshit. There are 3 companies that need this kind of people, and they're doing their interviews in that way. Most of the companies need a person that can solve problems, that can work with other people, that can actually express their ideas clearly, that can actually voice their concerns and questions the correct way. Being a senior developer is not about being the guy who writes the best for loops. For loops are not making you money. This is the reality.
Yeah, and I would also add,
How come?
sorry, I would also add
Yeah,
that
please go on.
the interview was only 1 hour, which is probably a bit less that you would expect from a senior interview. So our goal here is to just to give an understanding of how could it looks like, how the interview could look like, what topics can be discussed. For example, if we were to interview a middle developer, the questions is probably going to be more precise, like okay, we need to sort an array, what method of the array you would choose, like and in the senior interview we'll just ask, how would you do it, and to give in a space to the person to accumulate all of this expertise and give options, and also translate how these options will affect performance and other stuff like this. Okay, we have option this and this and this, but this one is more elegant but slower. This one is fast, but no one can read it besides me, and so on. So this is just a small part. We not covered any soft skills topics, like any managerial stuff that a senior developer could also cope in his daily work. So it's a small, I think it's a small side of how really interview could be done.
Okay, I guess it's last one question. What shouldn't be asked for on the senior position interview?
But Andre, the previous question was very nice.
It's related how complicated test work.
Yeah.
Okay, please go on.
Actually, that's an important question. The task that I gave was actually very, very simple in terms of description, but it also gave a huge amount of possibilities for implementation. right? So I want to give a task that can be solved with different data structures, with different algorithms, with different approach, with functions, with classes, with reduce, with functional approach. So I want to give a task that can be solved in many different ways. So I will give the ability to the guy, to the person, to show me what they know and what they can. I don't want to give them a task that can be solved by two mathematicians and you can only solve it if you are expert on the field. This is not giving me any information. Basically, it gives you zero information. The only information that you can get from such complicated task is that this person doesn't know this specific subject. It does not give you any information, anything than that. So I chose a simple task. I chose a task that can be done in many different ways. And this task is agnostic to language. You can do it in any language, so you can ask it on any technical interview. But then we discussed performance, complexity, we discussed return types, we discussed testing, we discussed a bit of defensive coding, a bit of solid principles. We discussed what else? I even forgot what else we discussed. And it was like 10 lines of code. So this is what you want from an interview task. And again, if you're doing interview for algorithm developer, probably the task is going to be much more complicated. Probably you will try to give a task that has no solution to see to what level the person will be able to cope with it and to try to wrap their head around it and so on. But again, this was not an interview for algorithm developer.
Yeah. I'll also add that the task was given to me just a few hours before the interview, so I was not writing the solution for 2 weeks. And so Martin just wrote me, just give yourself an hour and write a solution that you can really quickly come with, and we'll discuss further in the interview itself.
Yes.
So it's not really something that we were preparing beforehand a lot. So, and it was also time boxed. So if we'll do live coding, something like 10-15 minutes max is expected. Because if you'll throw at the candidate a task, write your Medium application in React in 1 hour, he will be just, out of this world because of the stress. And, this is a huge task to give to someone. So it should be, I think, in my opinion, the task should be there anyway, because you cannot hire a developer just by asking questions. You can train yourself to ask exactly correct answers to any question, and this is like a complete different skill. But also this task should be like time boxed, and as Martin said, gives you the opportunity to discuss a lot of different topics as well. So
something else that I just remembered is that if I'm hiring a person to do React, I wouldn't test React. I don't care about React. Okay, React is just a tool. So if you don't know React, you will learn. It's fine. I will help you. I'll teach you in 2 days. I'll teach you enough to make money with it. So that's fine. But I would also test. I would test how you think, how you manage elements. Because with React, the most important thing is how you compose your elements. So I would like to test something related to function composition, how you handle arrays, how you handle your data, things like this, how you sort it. I wouldn't test if you know the 3 hooks, and if you're writing class-based React, if you know the methods of the React component. It's a waste of time. It's something that you can learn in a couple of days.
Okay, I think last one question related to interview process. What shouldn't be asked on the senior position interview?
So that's a tricky one. All technical topics should be fine to discuss. As you saw, I was using whatever Mark is saying, just so I can get the best of him. But on a technical interview, you should definitely not ask things like marital status, children, like specific preferences. This information is irrelevant to the job. So things that are irrelevant to the job, you should not be asking at all. Things that could be considered personal information should not be asked at all. Like, are you a smoker? Well, why does it matter?
Probably accent here on senior position. What we can ask on junior or middle, on junior or middle position interviews, but shouldn't ask on senior.
I don't think there are such questions. From technical point of view, the junior developer will come up with many amazing questions to the senior, and the senior person should be prepared to answer. Even I don't know. This is also an answer. Like, it's fine answer to say I don't know. Nobody knows everything. The big point is that I'm trying to make is also with the task. I would give the same task to the senior developer, to the junior developer, to the middle developer, and to the architect. And I will ask them similar questions, but I will, for the senior, I would probably ask more about parallelism, code quality, testing, things like this. On the junior, I would be happy if they are able to solve it. On the mid developer, maybe something in between. But you get my point. There are no questions that are off the table in terms of technical questions. Especially foundation. Yes, I would expect you to know what is array, what is join, how it works. I would expect you to know some regex. I would expect everything. So foundational questions are very, very important.
Yep, I agree 100%.
And by the way, we discussed them in the interview with the function.
I would also add that I do interview myself. I do interviews myself, and there were cases that there were a candidate with 20 years of experience, but when you ask him about what data types there in JS, he's starting to throw some C# types at you. So there is no, I think, restriction on what shouldn't be asked. You can ask whatever you want, starting from the very basics, and it will still give you a relevant an opinion about how deeply the person knows this topic.
I have an example. So let's say I'm asking a junior about data types, okay? And I would expect them to give me an answer like referent types, cover types, or value types. If I ask senior about this, I would expect them to know how this works in the memory. So it is basically the same question, but it has completely different aspect because of the person that is in front of you. How to understand that you're already a senior? I don't know. I don't feel that I'm already a senior, even though I have it in my title currently. You should so the moment that you decide that you're senior, it means you stopped developing. And we're discussing here growth mindset, perfecting yourself, like lifelong learning and things like this. There is no way for you to become a senior. Like, to be a seniority figure, this is a way of living. So this is the sacrifices that you're making on your anniversary date. Like, today I am. So I'm doing live interview while I have my wedding anniversary. So these sacrifices that you're making in order for you to better yourself, to push yourself out of your comfort zone and things like this. This is what is defining you as somebody who is trustworthy. So seniority you can define in a very nice way. Think about it like, are people coming to ask you questions? So start from here. If people are starting to come to you for help, to help you, for your help, to ask you how to solve their issue, and when they're leaving your desk with their idea, not your idea. I don't know if this is clearly conveyed as a message, but people need to leave your desk with their idea, not your idea. So this is when you could start thinking that you might be growing into a senior persona.
Yep. And I think most of the companies have their own code of conduct of titles and stuff. So there is no one exact answer.
If you feel like a senior, you are a senior.
Just don't be senior developer, because that's a different thing.
Okay, so last question from me. Are you ready to hire Mark?
Yeah, sure. If he wants,
Okay.
I'll hire him.
So I think that's it. We have a lot of questions, but a lot of questions related to technologies. If you going to get the answers, you can ping Martin or Mark directly in some social networks or somewhere else. But thank you all for the participation. You can find our stream in our YouTube channel or our Facebook page. Subscribe us on Telegram channel and follow us, and we will create more and more
I'm
interesting
actually
webinars.
wearing our Math.random t-shirt right now. So subscribe, guys.
Okay, thank you very much, guys, and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Yeah, thanks for everything. Bye-bye.